This PMICV dinner event took place January 23rd, 2019. It features Bill Atkinson of Elemental Edge Training, presenting Leadership, Innovation, and Breaking the Spiral of Silence.
Speaking tonight is Bill Atkinson, Leadership, Innovation, and Breaking the Spiral of Silence. Perspectives on successful ways to lead into the future. That's what we get to learn about tonight. As a young man, Bill was an accomplished musician, but the entire course of his life changed when he made a decision to join the Navy. In his 21 years of service, he gained extensive leadership and teamwork experience as a Navy SEAL, completing his career with a distinction as a Commander Master Chief, SEAL Team 8. Following additional post-secondary education, he worked in commercial and residential construction, consulted in organizational transformation and change management, and provided winter survival and movement training to operators from SEAL Team 6. More recently, he worked for the Navy recruiting as a Warrior Challenge mentor, running the flagship program that successfully prepared hundreds of men and women ages 18 to 28 for the rigors of the SEAL, SWCC, DoD diver, and air rescue programs. Please welcome Bill.
I'm going to walk around a fair amount, and I'm not going to use that thing because I'd rather not. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. And I had a very enjoyable career as a SEAL. Back when I was in, I don't want to say it was easier to be a SEAL, but it was easier to become a SEAL. Today, it's a very selective process. First of all, anybody here got anybody in the service? Or know anybody in the service? So, okay. So the service it's called selective service, right? And today it's really selective. So for the Navy, for example, about 1 out of 5 of today's younger generation is eligible for service, meaning physically, mentally, and morally qualified to serve. So that weeds out a lot of people, right? 1 out of 5. If they want to pursue, if those men and women, and by the way, women can be SEALs today. I don't know if there's been any that have actually gotten to the training yet, what's called BUDS, but if there's women out there that want to do it, they can. But to get have the opportunity to pursue special operations jobs, let's say SEAL specifically, but all the Navy special operations jobs, and there's 5 of them, there's an additional vetting process. So by the time somebody gets the thumbs up to pursue the path of SEAL, for example, there's a lot of screening that goes on to ensure that they have the right stuff. And even then, once they leave civilian life and move forward into the service, there's an additional screening process, and sometimes people don't make it through that. So it's an extremely selective process, and when to be very honest, as he mentioned, as David mentioned, I was a musician. My goal was to be a professional trumpet player. That changed in high school. Tried college for a couple of years. I didn't have good study habits, but I sure had fun. Dropped out, ended up moving up here because I had a brother up here. He said, hey, come on up here, you can live with me and work for me. I was here through a winter without a car, living several miles from the workplace, and left the following spring for the Navy. My point is, I didn't even know, I'd never even heard of SEALs. And when I was in basic training, after which I was going to become a shipfitter, get some training to do that, there were these puffy-chested guys in tight t-shirts who said, hey, we're SEALs, we're going to show you a movie about SEALs, who they are and what they do. I was spellbound when I saw it. I signed up for taking a test to see if I might qualify. As luck would have it, I did, and the rest was history. I ended up doing it for a career, and it was a great career. It's still a great career today, but again, the selection process is much more robust than when I was in it. So What I want to do tonight really is talk about SEALs a little bit, but tell you stories that I experienced firsthand that tie into leadership, teamwork, innovation, and how they worked and how they didn't work, including in a highly specialized, highly trained organization like the SEAL teams. So, just to tell you a little bit more about SEALs. So all that vetting process, right, that I described a couple minutes ago, then you show up at SEAL training. It's out in Coronado, lovely place. You don't get to see the outside much when you're going through the training that lasts 6 months. And the highest attrition in SEAL training occurs in about the first 6 weeks of that training. Anybody that survives that 6 weeks, including Hell Week, where you're basically working in boat crews of 7 people, with about 4 hours of sleep from a Sunday night to a Friday afternoon, 4 hours total. Anybody that survives that, generally the instructors say, now you've proven to us you're ready to start training. Okay, so then you start the training, you learn more stuff. The training lasts for 6 months, including that 6 weeks I described. It ain't over yet. After that, then you have to go through SEAL qualification training, and that's another 4.5 months. There's people that don't make it through that. So imagine that. All that long 6-month process, then you get into SEAL qualification training, which takes what you learn in basic SEAL training, or basic underwater demolition SEAL training, or BUDS as it's called, takes that and ramps it up. Far more focused training, more challenging, more technical. There are people that don't make it through that. Most people do. The people that do make it through that, generally they get some leadership training. There's some that's already happened, of course, in BUDS and in SEAL qualification training. But then they'll get some additional leadership training, and then everybody know kind of the difference between enlisted and officer? Okay. So the enlisted are the technicians in the SEAL community. Every SEAL has their basic skill sets, their warfighter skill sets, essentially. But the enlisted folks are the technicians, so they become specialized in air operations, sub-operations, explosives, medical stuff, sniper, that sort of thing. The officers lead and manage. But when it comes to operating, everybody operates together. So after somebody shows up at a SEAL team, there's more training. The enlisted get their technical training for their specialties. The officers get their training, some leadership and management, some other things as well. After that block of training at the SEAL team, then they come together as a unit and do what's called a pre-deployment workup in preparation for a deployment that could be anywhere from, probably 2 months to 6 months, sometimes longer. Typically overseas somewhere. Typically these days, wherever there's a need for special operations units to do unconventional stuff. So a lot of training there, a lot of specialized training, a lot of unit training, a lot of team training, a lot of very close-knit, close-up and personal training with one another to be good at what they do. So that's a lot of stuff. I mean, anybody had any kind of exposure to that kind of training in any way? Or was it I mean, you had some in the Army for sure, right? You got pretty specialized training to do what you did. But this, I think it's probably fair to say it takes what you did, and I'm not downplaying it all, and then puts it on steroids. But these are the tip of the spear folks that are doing highly specialized stuff where there's a high risk or high degree for opportunities to fail, right? So they got to be well trained. And it's all about teamwork. So I'm going to tell you a story. And it's a true story. And I think VJ might have heard this one before. And I'm not going to tell you when it happened because I actually could now, but I'd be dating myself if I did tell you where it was and when. But I was in a 16-man platoon. We had 2 officers, and all the rest of us were enlisted. So you typically got 2 officers, and they're basically overall in charge. So one officer, he is overall in charge, and he's got an assistant. Below those 2 is a chief. The chief is the senior enlisted guy, and then there's the sled dogs. One of the sled dogs is called the leading petty officer, and I was the leading petty officer of that platoon. We got tasked with really what was, by SEAL standards, a very simple mission, real-world mission. We had to conduct a night combat hydrographic reconnaissance of a stretch of beach in the Caribbean in preparation for a World War II style amphibious assault by the Marines. So that's where the Marines hit the beach, right? Army does that too. The Army used to do it back in World War II, plenty. The Marines hit the beach, they secure the beach, and then they do whatever they got to do after that. But we were the first ones in. And we were going in the middle of the night. Always, 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 SEALs plan their missions together. Everybody has a critical role in the mission planning and then, of course, the execution. But the mission planning has a critical role. It's just the way it is, and it only makes sense because you've got your specialty, you've got your specialty, and we bring all that stuff together so that when we deploy as a unit to do our mission, we've shared all our capabilities, all our skills. We've talked a lot, we've worked on our teamwork, we've come up with innovative ideas that we need to come up with to be successful on the mission. On this mission, the officer in charge planned the entire mission himself. The entire thing. And when it came time to brief the mission, he invited people to the brief. The rest of us had no idea why he did that and didn't think it made sense. But we didn't say anything because we didn't want to look stupid in front of the people that were invited to hear our brief on the mission that we were going to execute. We didn't say anything during the entire brief. We had some idea of what we were supposed to do, but the devil is always in the details, and we didn't know the details. We didn't. For a simple mission, a hydrographic reconnaissance. We weren't even sure who was doing what and when, but we didn't say anything. And we launched from the ship in our 2 Zodiacs. I was the leading petty officer. I asked the chief a few questions because he was the guy I talked to. And he said, you know, it'll be okay. We'll pull this off. And I thought, I don't know if we are going to pull this off. I see people nodding their heads. I think this maybe sounds familiar. This is still on. Let me put this over. That's not me, by the way. And when I saw this podium and it's actually on wheels, I was looking for a motor, and I wanted to do the Melissa McCarthy as spicy, and just go around the room. And I've got an extinguisher underneath too. For the liar, pants on fire. So Our greatest asset, not just in the SEAL teams, but in life, is us, right? We're more important than hardware, we're more important than software, we're more important than, and I'm not discounting those things, I'm not saying they're not important. But you know, the processes, the software, the hardware, hey, this is how we do it, that's all great stuff. And it works really well if we're working together. Right? I know that may sound really simple. Well, yeah, yeah, I know that. You got to work together. But I can't tell you how many times I see on a regular basis where those simple things aren't actually happening. People get focused on what they're doing. They're not tuned into what's going on around them. They might be thinking about something else when their eye is really off the ball on what's important. So it's about the people. And the right people. When you've got the right people and your work and the leadership and the innovation is there, the leading and the following, even if you have limited resources, if you're working together, it's amazing what you can accomplish. It's amazing. And I have to believe that everybody in here has had that experience at some point in their lives. It's like, yeah, I remember that. Hopefully, maybe I just spurred that thought in your head right now. I remember that time when, and holy smokes, it just, everything came together and it worked perfectly. It can happen. It should happen. The best equipment in the world can't compensate for that. It can't. So in innovative spaces, it's our jobs as leaders to bring that out in people. Whether it's people we work with every day, or we've got to go work with an organization and spur them on to get them to work together, to build those teams, create the leadership, create the innovation, get the communication flowing, and then it's almost like you can sit back and just watch it go. Right? You're just kind of like, you're on the periphery, you're listening carefully, but it's going. But the innovative leaders, we're the ones that spur them. Right? Not saying that in a boastful way, but that's what we have to do. If we don't do that, there can be consequences. So it's, we've got to be creative in thought. We've got to inspire others to be creative in thought. We've got to monitor the innovation. We've got to keep the innovation going in the right direction, right? Keep it on point, because that's important. If somebody's got a great idea, we want to hone in on that, and then talk about that, see if it makes sense, or maybe kind of redirect it. But we've got to lead and build consensus to get people to work together, to take those innovative ideas, build the teams, communicate, and move forward in the right direction to get things done. At the same time, we need to tune into the spiral of silence. What is the spiral of silence? Yeah, what you're doing right now, yeah. I'm not going to say anything, I have no idea. Let's think back to that mission I was talking about. And the officer in charge briefing our mission that we were supposed to execute shortly after we completed the briefing. None of us said anything. In our case, we didn't say anything because we didn't want to look stupid in front of the guests that came to our brief. That's why we didn't say anything. What we should have done is said some things. Hey, what about this or what about that? Or hey, this is a better idea. We should do this. The spiral of silence is out there. It's lurking in organizations, in environments that you go into as project management professionals. There are people that have good ideas that don't say anything for whatever reason. Oh, my idea, this is really stupid or it's crazy, it's never going to work, or they don't want to hear it, or you know what, I know my idea is a good one. They're not going to listen to me. Why should I bring it up? I'm not even going to bother. You know what, it doesn't really matter anyway, and nobody really cares. That happens. So as professionals, you got to tap into that. You got to have that heightened awareness. You got to be looking, listening, awareness of the individuals at all levels. And then sometimes you have to make those tough calls and say, you know what, I really, hey Angel, you got a minute? Can we have a conversation? I think I'm seeing something. Well, first of all, Angel, you know what I'm suggesting with this project, right? Yeah, right. Well, it all seems good, but when I got to this point working with your group, I heard a few mumblings, and then I didn't hear anything, and so I talked to this one person, and here's what they told me. They're going to remain anonymous because I just think that's a good idea. But here's what they told me, and I said, gee, that's a really good idea. And so I'm bringing this up to you because, first of all, it seems like a really good idea to me. What do you think about this? Should we do something with this or not? But at the same time I'm doing that with you, if you're in a position of leadership, for example, I'm asking you those questions, and I'm going to listen very carefully to see if, okay, what's going on with Angel here, right? So that's that. You got to have that intuitive piece. That's definitely something as leaders and people that are encouraging innovation have got to have, right? Because you want to move the process forward. You want to bring people together. You want them to do the right things. And you want to watch it just like I said 10 minutes ago, like, wow, look at that. They've got the right recipe going there. Things are going great guns. I'm going to stand on periphery because I got to pay attention and listen just to make sure to keep them on track, right? Because that happens too. They start to drift away. Wait a minute, let me reel you back in. But the other thing is that if there is a problem, and it usually involves people, you've got to identify those things and as carefully as possible without offending anybody, bring them out into the open, right? Because when you're asking people to make changes, when you're asking people to innovate, unless you've started the process and they just run with it, again, you still got to keep an eye on them. Most of the time, it's going to create rift, conflict, problems of, you know, we always did it this way, or this is the way we should do it. I know this is the way we should do it. Well, wait a minute, what about this? And right? You got to do that stuff. You know, you got to tap into that. You got to listen. You got to keep people on track. You got to pull people aside that maybe need to be pulled aside to have a conversation with them. Because the ultimate goal is it keeps everybody happy, keeps everybody working together, gets everybody involved, and makes things happen. with a lot of energy and positive flow, and as I said 15 minutes ago, you may not even have all the, an organization you're working with may not have all the things that they need to get something done, but they come up with a workaround that, where'd you come up with that idea? That's a great idea. People. Steering them, helping them innovate, helping them lead. That's what we do in the SEAL community, the good leaders. That's what I would imagine you all do as project management professionals. Always ensuring the team knows the purpose of what they're doing, so keeping them focused, right? So what I'm assuming when you go into work with folks with your projects, you have a big picture of what it is you're supposed to do. Do I have that right? Right? Do you necessarily know all the details? Or is it a step-by-step process? But do you know all the details? I mean, how many, in the SEAL community, there are probably 1 out of 100 guys that I knew that were good operators. Probably about 1 out of 200 that were good operators and also were brilliant. They could, our missions were very complicated. We always had a primary and a secondary plan, oftentimes a tertiary plan. The really smart guys, that 1 out of 200 guys, they could, okay, tell me a mission from beginning to end, and they could do that, without looking at a piece of paper. How many of you are like that in here? I'm not, right? So, still got to have the big picture though, and that's important. Task before ego, team before self. Keeping people on point. Certainly in the community I was in for 21 years, there were a lot of big egos. There still are. And it gets in the way of progress, gets in the way of doing the right thing, lots of times. Decentralizing and delegating. Right? Train others to lead. Do you all do that? You try, yeah. With reasonable success? Yeah. So part of that, just a little bit on that, is, you gotta give somebody the opportunity to do that. And then hopefully the team that they're with kind of gives them that little nudge and push to keep them going in that direction. So, and consensus build, I already mentioned that. So, what makes SEALs so good at what they do in addition to all the training they get is that they are extremely team focused. Never work in less than 2. Sometimes 4. In my case, even the last platoon I was in, 16, they work in larger groups now because they have much more complex missions. So, very team focused, constantly training as teams. In your world, with groups you may work with, unless they're working together for extended periods of time, like we did as SEALs, for example, a platoon, I would be in a platoon for 1.5 to 2 years, so I was with the same guys for that long. I don't know how much you encounter that. So if you don't encounter that a lot, or even if you do with the folks you work with, team building is a never-ending, ongoing process. You've got to constantly revisit it, encourage it, continue to help the individuals you're working with build on it to make it stronger, more cohesive, more innovative, good leading, good following, to again, to get to that point where you almost say, you know what, I don't need to work with them anymore. They don't need my help. Hey, call me if you need my help. Not the case. I mean, you're still going to check in on them, but but you just see so much energy and positive energy and enthusiasm and an ability and belief to get the job done and do it well, that you've helped create that process and that mix, that recipe that's got them going. And it can be infectious enough where it spreads throughout the organization or whoever it is you're working with. And that's a lot of fun. And it's the right thing to do. So in the case of that mission I went on, or that we went on, how do you think that turned out? Anybody? That would be an understatement. Yeah. So we managed to launch the boats from the ship. That was pretty straightforward. At little Zodiacs, I forget how many, but we had 16 guys. It was probably 4. Myself and one other guy were swimmer scouts. So essentially what we had to do is, if this was a stretch of beach, right? We had to come in somewhere offshore in the boats, and 2 of us went into the water, myself and one other guy. Nobody else volunteered. Yeah. Okay, I'll do it. And so the boats kind of hung out here, and they waited for myself and one other guy to swim into shore together, and then we had to do a hasty reconnaissance of this stretch of beach, right? So that meant we had to go up on shore, do kind of like a little rectangular pattern, meet in the middle, and if we didn't get shot or something happened to us, then we signaled out to the boats out in the water and said, hey, it's okay now, we can do the hydrographic reconnaissance. So the first disaster was me and my buddy didn't properly waterproof our weapons. Salt water, sea state was bad. We're in the surf zone, and it was pretty good surf that night. And I knew my weapon was toast. It was not going to work because it was full of sand. So we had pistols as backup. They might have worked. And we made the decision, are those bodies in the prone position with weapons waiting to shoot us if they see any bodies come up on the shore? Or is it just driftwood? We couldn't tell. So we just decided to go for it. And fortunately, there were pieces of driftwood. There weren't any trenches dug in sand. There weren't any bad guys waiting for us. That was the best part of the mission. It was our hasty reconnaissance on the beach. It went downhill from there. The reconnaissance was a total disaster. Took way too long. And again, a simple mission. Basically, a bunch of swimmers starting at one end, all on line, spaced out evenly, swimming along parallel to the beach with little lines with a weight on the bottom and little knots tied on the line saying, okay, this is the depth of the water here. I'll mark that on my slate. This is the depth here, and so on and so forth until they got to the other end. Simple. But we screwed that up, right? And it's starting to move towards dawn. And the boats are still out in the water. And we should have been done already. Done and back out to the ship. Providing all the details about that stretch of beach so the Marines could come in their amphibious and do an amphibious assault, secure the beach, and then move to the next objective, which was an airstrip, I don't know, I think it was about a quarter mile away. Secure that airfield, right? So that whatever else needed to happen after that would happen. So we didn't get the job done. And the boss decided, well, you know what? The surf's kind of marginal, which it was, sort of. We'll just tell them, hey, you don't want to do an amphibious assault. The sea state's too bad. Better do something else. So the Marines decided to come in their helicopters. And we just hung out on the beach, which isn't what we're supposed to do. We were supposed to do our thing, go back out to the ship, nobody'd ever see us, nobody'd know that we were there. We failed. We failed our mission, plain and simple. Failed. Yes.
So how was the leader, team leader, the top notch basically, how was he handling this dynamics? Was he yelling? Was he calm? Was he saying, don't worry about it, we screwed up? I mean, tell us about that dynamics between him and people who are underneath him in terms of we're screwing up. This is not what I told you in the meeting.
Yeah, great
Tell us
question.
about that dynamics. How was he handling this? Because it looks like it was pure failure. Was he smiling? Was he yelling? And
No, he didn't yell. He,
this is interesting because this is a real life
I gotta
situation,
drink
right?
water.
Because you have to live every minute of it.
We thought lots of things. And I'll tell you one that I still think to this day.
I hope Beckman wasn't involved here.
You hope what?
You said you thought about a lot of things. I said, oh, I hope Beckman wasn't involved.
Yeah, no. You mean shoot him?
Yeah.
We thought. Oh, friendly fire. Oh, no, only one person. To this day, I think he was so caught up in his ego that he just said, okay, well, that didn't work. What's the next thing we can do and I can do to make this look okay? Oh, I know what I'll do. The sea state was too bad. No, don't come in from the sea. Come in your helicopters. The problem with that was there was a lot of vegetation just beyond the beach, right? So we came in, right, the beach is on the other side of the wall here. There was so much vegetation, I'm sure they were thinking, well, where are we going to land our helicopters? And I know I was. Well, where are they going to land their helicopters? They're not going to land them on the beach. And, you know, just on the other side of this vegetation, just past the beach, is the airfield. We don't know what's going on over there. They pulled it off. But back to my point is, I think that was it, because he didn't seem to get too upset about that. He didn't chastise us after we got back to the ship and, you know, kind of hanging our heads down. That's the only conclusion I could come to. Which leads me to the next mission. That same area of operation. And again, a fairly simple mission, a little more complex because we had to actually travel a further distance over the water. But the nice thing was that we were able to do that with bigger boats that were operated by special boat operators. We transited, I think it was 20 miles, 20 or 25 miles. And we had to, our mission was to reconnoiter a smaller airfield to make sure there wasn't anything bad going on there. There weren't any gun placements that might cause problems when we, the U.S. Armed Forces secured the whole area, which was a big island, a couple of smaller islands. Pretty simple mission, but we only had 24 hours to do it. Within that 24 hours, we had to leave the ship, transit 20 miles in bigger boats, launch our smaller boats out of those, take them into shore with 8 guys instead of 16, cache those boats, that means hide them, make them go away, patrol about, I think it was 2 clicks, that's 1.2 miles, right? To get to the airfield, give it a reconnoiter, report back to the muckety-mucks out on the ships and say, here's what's going on here. Then move back to our 2 boats that were cached, pull them out of the bushes, launch them back out to sea, rendezvous with the bigger boats, put our boats, our little boats in the bigger boats, and then go back to the ship. That may not sound like a lot, but that's a lot to do in 24 hours with 8 guys. So on that mission, the boss was on that one too, go figure. 7 other guys, so 1 officer and 7 enlisted. I was on that one too, but I wasn't invited to the planning of that one. He invited 2 guys in the platoon that were kind of his favorite guys, junior enlisted guys, and he had them work up some of the communication plan and some of the other essential parts of the mission that all of us should have been involved in. So the launch from the ship went fine. The launch from the bigger boats after the 25-mile transit, that went fine. Our transit into the beach, or into this little lagoon actually tonight, that went like clockwork. Cached the boats. They disappeared in the brush, in the swamp. And then we started our patrol. 2 clicks to get to this little airfield, do our reconnaissance, report back, and then reverse the whole process. A point man is a person that leads the patrol to the objective. Person's in front, right? So a good point man picks a route that's reasonably safe, fairly easy to move. It's tactically sound. And our point man did it. But the boss didn't like where the route he selected. And he said, we're going in that way. Boss, we don't want to go in there. It's mangrove swamp. Have you ever been in a mangrove swamp? I've seen raccoons in there. Otters do okay in mangrove swamp. Humans don't do well trying to move through mangrove swamp. The trees have these, they're like spider legs, right? And they're like, the spider legs are very close together, so you can't move through them. You can't swim through it, you can't move through it. Well, the boss decided that's where we needed to go because it wasn't safe on the edge of the mangrove. The fact that there was a pasture here with cows on it, it's too dangerous. We got to go in there. What do you think happened? Again, we had to move 2 clicks to get to the airfield. Do you think we got there? We covered probably 200 yards by daylight. And that was moving probably, I'm guessing, about 4 hours. Yeah. So the boss said, well, we still got to reconnoiter that airfield. Let's send Atkinson and the chief. They'll go do the reconnaissance. So we did. We were wading through swamp that was about this deep. The bottom was really mucky. We weren't making good progress. But we did get to the airfield, and we looked at it from one point for about 20 minutes. Oh, looks like there might be an airplane out there. Well, there's a guy. What's he doing? Oh, he's on the phone. That good? Yeah, that's good. We got to get back now. We failed again. We failed the mission. Looking back on it, though, that wasn't, well, comedy of our errors. While the chief and I were moving through the swamps, we thought about our buddies hanging out in the mangrove swamp and how uncomfortable that must have been. We saw this one little dry patch of land that was like in the middle of the mangrove swamp. What's that doing there? Hey, you know what? We'll take the other 6 guys and all 8 of us. We'll go hang out there and wait for darkness to go exfiltrate back. Go get our boats and go back out to sea, right? So we told him about the spot. The boss said, yeah, let's do that. Okay. So we took everybody that nice little dry spot. Guys were getting relaxed. They were starting to nod off and fall asleep. The rule was 2 guys, stay awake, weapons ready, just in case. And I don't know, we were there for maybe a couple of hours waiting for darkness to go back to our boats and back out to sea. And we heard humans. And they were locals. A bunch of women and some kids with a couple of dogs came into it was a bigger dry area than we realized. They came in there to cut wood, probably, you know, for cooking, whatever. And one of the dogs came right up to the edge of the clearing, this little clearing. I mean, we're nested in here. We're hiding pretty good. You know, we're all back to back, right? We got our backpacks on. We're all sitting down. We're fully cammyed out, you know, camo gear and faces. Got our weapons. Some guys are snoring lightly. Other guys are still awake. And this dog it looks at us and just sits there and it's barking. And it barked for like, I don't know, 25 minutes before this large local woman came to see what the dog was barking about and looked, and there we were. And she just backed away. Her eyes got huge. She backed away like, I didn't see anything. And the dog stopped barking, though. It was almost funny. It wasn't, because it wasn't quite dark yet. And what were we going to do? So we had to move. And so anyway, we did move, and we got back out to sea, and all that part went okay. But again, we failed the mission. Why did we fail the mission? Anybody? Some reasons why.
Because you only have two in the room. I want to talk to the two of you.
Yeah.
As opposed to the rest.
Eight talented people available to plan the mission, then execute it, and only 3 involved in the process. And I got to tell you, the other 2 guys, they were knuckleheads. We used to call them the girls. And no offense to anybody in here, but we used to call them the girls because they hang out together and giggle at each other. Look at the girls. What are they giggling about today? Yeah, only 3 out of 8 people planned the mission. So there wasn't a whole lot of creative thought put into that. Our equipment did work, so we didn't have any equipment failure. How about the process failure? Where did we fail in the process? Where? Yeah, when we went into the mangrove. That was the beginning of the end right there. Right? Ran out of time. And can you see the pattern here? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So that's not just true in the SEAL community, where even the best made plans, with a primary, secondary, and tertiary, even the best made plans, they're still prone to failure. But time and again, I can't tell you how many times, when we come together, we talk it out. Hey, you're really quiet, Scott. Do you have any ideas on this? Well, actually, yeah, I was thinking about, holy smokes, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's put that into this plan, this process. Right? Every time, every single time in my community, in the SEAL community, every single time that I've worked with groups, when we come together, when we talk, we can put the phones down. We can put the pieces of equipment away. I'm not saying we don't need that. We don't need the processes. What I'm saying is when we all come together, boom, it is like magic. It's magic every single time. You know, if that ever changes, I hope it doesn't in my lifetime, and we get replaced by machines and processes and equipment and all that stuff. It can't. It's timeless. And it's magic when it happens. Every single day, you're like, how's that possible? I mean, the first time it happened, I thought it was an accident. But then when I saw it happen again and again and again, I'm like, no, it is magic. But the magic is bringing people together, providing the leadership and the guidance and the innovation, keeping them steering in the, keep steering in the right direction, breaking those spirals of silence if they're out there. And so it goes. It always works. Every single time. I've never seen it not work. Even when the crap hit the fan. Wait a minute. Oh, we didn't plan for this. Hey, let's. No, we don't have time to talk about this. We're going to get shot or something bad is going to happen. No, we do have time, even if it's 30 seconds. That's a great idea. Let's do that. We got to keep moving. And then you adapt and overcome again. But you're working together. And as professionals, leading people, building the consensus, being innovative, having the big picture, inspiring innovation, inspiring leading, inspiring following, consensus building, getting them to build consensus. Every time it works. I guarantee you. Yes.
So was your team of 8 picked for their specialties? Or was it
For that
just-
mission?
Yes, because it sounds like that's what you're looking for, people that are specialties, everyone's got something to contribute. And then you didn't recognize that. Did you pick them for that reason?
Well, honestly, again, that was not a hard mission. So anybody in that 16-man platoon could have done that mission. And the other 8 guys in the platoon, remember, it was a platoon of 16, so thanks for that question. They were actually on standby for another mission that never happened. Yeah. So a more complex mission, the specialties would come into play, but again, I contend. And even in the SEAL community, with all the training, all the organization, all the SEALs that deploy somewhere now, there's a lot more of them that deploy all over the world. There's still going to be those situations where it's like, God, I wish John was here. I wish Ginny was here for this, because she's really good at this. Yeah, but you know, I remember the time that Ginny said this about this, and couldn't we tie this in? Yeah, we could. Again, it's, you know, when you come together, you start getting the juices flowing, you talk. It's like, we can do this. We can do this, and this is how we're going to do it. And here's our backup plan.
Did you ever have the opportunity to ask your officer or address the fact that he was making plans with, you know, a portion of his squad?
You know, I'm laughing.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because it got so bad on that deployment that guys actually checked out. We had one guy who said, I'm nuts, I'm going nuts out here, I've got to leave. I don't think that was true, but he was smarter than the rest of us. He got off the deployment. But it was a miserable deployment. And I'll be honest with you. I did something I shouldn't have done, but I, to this day, don't feel badly about it. I had a good working relationship with the commanding officer of the team. I wrote him a letter from the deployment. I didn't have to throw it in a ball overseas and hope that he'd get it, because the Navy's still going to mail dispatch it out at sea. He got that letter, and he actually wrote me back while I was on deployment. And my boss, the platoon officer in charge, it put a ding in his career. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, so you
I mean, I thought,
you went to his boss,
right, have we ever encountered that situation where you know, we feel so strongly that, hey, this is the right thing? You know, my biggest beef was not just with him, it was the fact that our platoon, which had a lot of good guys in it, was not being managed and led properly, and we were rotting out there. And we were actually starting to fight amongst ourselves. How many of you have seen that when leadership and management is lacking, or you can't inspire them to do the right thing? And then the challenge becomes, well, do I create a mutiny of sorts and say, hey, this group they really got their act together. The boss is kind of out there. What I found with that situation is, you know, if you're fairly transparent about it, not necessarily up front, but if the team has come together, the juices are flowing, they're leading, they're following, they're innovating, they're moving in a great direction, the boss says, yeah, well, you know, whatever, they're doing a pretty good job, and I guess I'll let them do their thing. I've seen that happen. But sometimes you get the boss that doesn't let that happen, and then you know, that's a tough one when that happens. Did I? Okay.
What about situations that are the opposites of the spiral silence, where everyone has so many ideas and no one can come to consensus on anything?
That's where you gotta reel them in. Say, whoa, wait a minute. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of enthusiasm here, but hey, this is what I understand the big picture to be. Do I have that right? Yes, you got that right. Okay, so a lot of good ideas, but we need to boil that down, right? All those ideas are going into a funnel, and it's going to come out the other end. There's only going to be a few of those, because we got to keep things moving. Innovation's great, but we got to keep it focused. We got to keep it going in the right direction. And even if only two come out the other end, and they don't seem perfect, we still got to move forward with that. And as we move forward, then, well, maybe we've got to make some more changes along the way, but that's part of the process. Did that answer your question?
That's the role of the leader. That's
100%. That's the role of the professionals too, though, that working with the leaders.
That's the role of the leader. How to
Yeah.
stay on.
Sometimes we have to marginalize a leader. If the leader's not got his or her act together, sometimes we have to politely marginalize them. In my opinion, in my humble opinion.
I recently heard about an exercise that says use called after action reviews. So like
Yeah,
post
AARs.
exactly. So like post mission, the team gets together and you remove hierarchy, no leadership, and basically you're super candid about.
This is what happened.
Did you have experience with that, or is that something you've done in the past?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We always did that. Great point. Always did that. We would seal missions. The actual execution of the mission, it's about that much. All the planning and then the after action is about that much. Like the SEALs were the ones that got Osama bin Laden. They trained, I believe, for months for that. Had a full-on mock-up somewhere in the continental United States. And they still almost failed that mission. So they had an after action on that one. Yep. Talked about, what happened with the helicopter. How come we lost a helicopter? We overcame with that one. We still got the mission done. We didn't lose anybody. But boy, that wasn't good. How can we do that better the next time? And hopefully people remember. That's the other part. After actions,
In your subsequent career as an instructor versus being, on the team, what would you say was maybe your one or two behavioral corrections that we needed to suggest to the teams that you train through your observation and using wisdom to change something?
couple of things.
Other than maybe some specific technical things that can't apply anywhere else but in the SEALs, but of course, some of them would be more general.
Well, the big one, of course, is working together as a team. Planning together as a team. The other big one, ego's one way to look at it. But I don't know, don't we always find that among a group of people, if I'm sitting at this table and I'm having a conversation, or we're having a good conversation about something pretty specific, maybe half the table's involved, and then there's one person that just kind of starts to wander off or something. So that's not an ego thing, that's a focus thing. So, getting the egos out for sure. But that, again, that's focusing on the task or tasks at hand. Hey, this is what we have to do, right? Have I got this right? Yeah. Okay, well, let's stay focused on this. Let's keep moving. Somebody starts talking again. Hey, how do you say your name?
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Can you join the conversation, please? happens a lot. Did I answer your question? Somebody else had a? Yeah, Neil.
So, and this gentleman asked a question that maybe I wish I had asked this question before you got to him, because he was talking about what would be like a post-sprint review, right?
Postmortem, yeah.
Yeah, or post-mortem. So what I wanted to hear from you, if you could talk about it for a little bit, was, you know, part of project management, a big pre-planning thing is gathering requirements. So for your missions, I mean, you're talking about life and death. You know, there's, you know, you're going in. It's like, how much intelligence can you get up front? Like, can you talk a little bit about, you know, as you can, how you got that information to, you know, for requirements, and then, you know, what was your process turning that into a plan for a mission?
So, typically, well, on that first mission,
Which it sounds like the first mission you didn't really get.
well, you know, I mean, that first mission, we didn't even know we were going. We were on a ship. We thought we were headed to the Mediterranean, so the sun should have been rising in front of us. We're like, hey, what's going on here? The sun's rising over there, and the water's getting greener, and it's getting warmer. We found out about 4 days out that where we were headed and kind of what was going on, and that we might stand by to maybe do a mission. The only intel we got was apparently a Marine on the ship had a tourist map of the island that we were going to assault.
So is that typical, or is it more?
Not anymore, no.
Oh, okay.
No, you got defense intelligence. I mean, the special operations forces today, and all the services have them. Defense Intelligence Agency information, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, people already on the ground, imagery. There's a lot of assets out there. Drones. So there's a lot of assets out there.
So is your team involved from start to finish? Or let's say modern times, not that one example that you gave with the story of the not so successful mission, but, you know, is the team involved from the get-go? Is there, you talked a little bit
No,
about
well,
being on the team, and, you know, what's,
you mean in what they, these are the missions?
like, how do you get a bunch of intel, you get requirements,
Right.
and how does that turn into a plan for a typical SEAL team now, or as best you know now?
I guess the simplest way I could answer that is, we have our, you know, the requirements are out there, but we also have our requirements. So, for example, if the SEALs had to conduct a mission today, what are the requirements of the mission? And a higher authority should be providing that information. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't. So we ask a lot of questions. We have, I mean, honestly, so I'm imagining as project management professionals, you must have a lot of checklists and stuff like that. Do I have that right? Yeah, so we have that. You know, I mean, it's like this long. And we go down the list, you know, that one's not relevant to this mission, that one's not. And then we have, I would imagine they still, back in my day, they had SWAMPs, SEAL, Special Warfare Automated Mission Planning System. And we had, it was a software on a laptop. And so it would have a whole laundry list of, you know, requirements, information requirements we needed to conduct our mission. But most of the time, the taskings we received them because we were the best choice to accomplish
So
that mission.
your team was specialized for that type.
Yeah. Specialized. SEALs are typically the water guys. Anything that's going to be conducted on, in, or under the water is a SEAL mission, typically. That said, if the SEALs aren't in that particular area of operation right now, and something's got to be done in the next 6 to 12 to 24 hours, whoever's there to accomplish that as best they can is going to do it. It's the way it is. And again, that's where it comes into that teamwork thing and figuring out how to get it done and then doing it to the best of your ability. Did somebody else have a question?
As you're talking about levels of engagement of your team members, it sounds like a lot of that is based on trust. And I
Oh,
would think
100%.
that on your team, that engagement, obviously they've gone through all of that training and all that. I think they probably have already a higher level of engagement, whereas some of the folks on our teams may not have that same type of
Yeah.
engagement.
That's
So
right.
did you do special things to help build that trust, or was it just you were kind of all in it together? So, right, so if you build that trust is when people open up, when they start to ask
That's
questions
right.
and do different things.
That's right. Did everybody hear the question? Okay, so, that's right. In the SEAL community, I mean, we literally, when I was going through Hell Week, so started Sunday night, finished secured on Friday afternoon. We had the winning boat crew, so we secured 4 hours ahead of everybody else. Paid to be a winner. I weighed 155 pounds soaking wet, and I went through a winter class. Well, you're thinking, oh, San Diego in the wintertime, what's bad? The water's cold. It was cold. So we had one night in these mud flats, and they let us stay in these little shelter halves, and we just kind of cozy up to one other person, one other guy, in between playing in the mud in the middle of the night. And I was pretty cold. So my shelter half weighed about 220 pounds, and he was like a heater. I fell in love with him that night. And he quit the next day. I mean, he did, and it wasn't because of me. But he disappeared the next day. I'm like, wow, that's too bad. I wouldn't have made it through that night without that guy. I wouldn't have made it. So I'm talking a little bit of humility here, right? I mean, I was like, hey, hey, Paul, I don't know if I'm going to make it tonight. Just get a little closer. You're saving my life right now. Humility. So working with groups like you, these people didn't go through SEAL training. They're not special operators. They're like all the rest of us. What do you got to do to inspire them to really try to get the juices flowing? That's your question, right? You got to be the magician. You got to have the big picture. You got to inspire them to want to do this, to make the changes, to say, yeah, there's going to be pushback, and maybe not everybody's on board, but maybe it doesn't seem like the right thing to do, but you know what? Just kind of set that aside and trust the process. If you can't do anything else, if you're not really believing in this, just trust it and let's see where it goes. And in the process, you're injecting humor, you're being humble. That's a great question. I'm not sure the answer to that, but I'll find. Anybody know the answer to that question? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. That's a great idea. It's like you're like the ringmaster or the band leader or whatever, the cheerleader with a big picture, inspiring the leaders to lead, inspiring the followers to follow, inspiring the followers to lead, inspiring everyone to innovate, keeping them on point, keeping them moving in a direction, even if you're not sure it's the right one. But they're going in a direction, and you can always change course. And everybody's involved, not just a few people, but everybody.
So the culture and common goal plays a big role here.
Huge.
Where you are around you, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's sort of an unspoken rules. You're not telling you this is the way the culture is, but I think by everybody just understanding where they are,
Yeah.
their surroundings, and sort of these are unspoken things, and that's what
Yeah.
I call the culture. This could be any company. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be Marine or Sea or any the company you work for. It's very
Absolutely.
Culture is very important.
Yeah.
And the common goal we all put together.
And inject humor. Get that. If you can get that pouty-faced, miserable person all of a sudden look up and like, oh, that was funny. You've had a breakthrough. And then the next thing you know, they're like, they pull their chair. And then the next thing you know, they go, hey, I got an idea. And you're like, here it goes. It's happening. How can I get this going a little more? Right? I mean, how many of you have had this experience? Right? I would offer up that it's harder for you. You know, in the organization I worked in, if you didn't do that stuff, you were like, that guy, the word we use was shitbird. That guy's a shitbird. We gotta, when we get back, he's out of here. We gotta get rid of that. You can't do that when you use that word. What I meant. Yeah, but what you do in the process is you create awareness of that person that may like, you know what, it's, no, that ain't it. No, that's not it either. Right? And that's, I call it adapting, overcoming, and succeeding. Always moving in a direction. Got to always move in a direction. Maybe change course, but you're always moving forward with purpose and focus. Inspiring others to do the same thing. Right? Let me go back to my notes. They're in 10 font. I can't read them. I do want to, I don't need to. I've already talked about the team building. What's the difference between team building and teamwork? What's the difference?
Team building is more of an attitude, to set the attitude, to set the environment. Teamwork means you have a common goal.
Does that mean I got to stop? I don't know, what time is it? How are we doing on time?
Yeah, you get a little bit.
Are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
In theory, you have until 8:30
And what time is it?
or 8:20, and right now it's 8 o'clock.
Anytime, yeah, you can
Well, my jaws are getting tired anyway, so. So I like to think of it, you gotta build a team first. And once the team is built, whatever the team is, whoever you've got, then the teamwork starts. And then the teamwork goes from there. Build a team first, then the teamwork. But it's a continuous process. And we as professionals who, and you've got that triangle, right? What's the PMI or PMP triangle? It's leadership. It's a talent triangle.
Talent triangle, I know.
Come on, it's, you're gonna ask me to remember? Remember, I'm one of those guys that doesn't remember. I just talk.
Technical, leadership.
That's leadership, technical, and
Strategic, yeah.
strategic.
And what's the third one? Strategic. What's that mean? Where are we going, right? Right? Is that basically? Yeah. So, so I do want to talk about, if you all can, anybody need a cup of coffee? The one last mission. So this one was fairly complex, but we pulled it off. There were only 4 of us. Right. No, there were 6. 4 Navy SEALs and 2 Norwegian Jaegers. So they were basically our Norwegian counterparts. We had to launch from we had to launch out of the torpedo tubes of a Norwegian diesel submarine. And then we had to swim on our rebreathers, that's a scuba rig, for several hundred yards on a specific compass bearing to find a communications cable that went between an island and the mainland, plant explosives on it, destroy the cable to break the communication between the island and the mainland, and then go away and eventually rendezvous with friendly forces. So there were a lot of moving parts to that mission. We knew we were going to be in the water, then moving over land for anywhere from 4 to 6 days, I think it was. We knew that if we got to land, we had to get out of our scuba gear and our dry suits and into something that we could move over land with. And by the way, there was about 3 feet of snow on the ground. And we knew that we had to find food for a couple of days. And then we had to plan for an airdrop that was going to deliver us some more equipment and food. And we had to continue moving to a specific point of land on the island to get extracted out into the fjords and exfiltrate back to a friendly base. So a lot of moving parts to that. How do you get a guy with scuba in a dry suit with clothing on underneath and some food, not much, and something to move over the snow with, into a 19-inch diameter tube, to spit out that tube, swim several hundred yards on a specific bearing, find the needle in the haystack that was a communication cable, detonate explosives that you attach to that cable, go ashore, and move to another point over a period of days, during which you're going to get an airdrop, if you're lucky, with some food and more equipment to accomplish the mission and exfiltrate back to the friendly base. So a lot of moving parts on that. And we had 2 Norwegians. They both spoke good English. So we had 6 very capable people to do that mission. And everybody got involved in the planning. Everybody. And we came up with a good plan, which was to break into 2 groups of 3, stagger our launch from the submarine into 2 separate groups, each group capable of conducting the mission, staggering the mission in such a way that if the first group failed, in other words, the explosives didn't detonate and destroy the communication cable, the second group would do that. If the first group was successful, though, the second group wouldn't get blown up by the explosion detonating the cable performed by the first group when they were successful. So that's kind of complicated, to be very honest. But we did a lot of planning. We had a fair amount of time to do the planning. Worked out all the what-ifs. Realized that once we launched out of the torpedo tubes of the submarine, that communication was over, except for hand signals, because we couldn't talk to each other underwater. And we did it. I was in the first group, so Murphy was still there. Our explosives didn't work, so we didn't detonate the cable. So our mission after that was to go ashore anyway and wait up for the second group, who was successful. But it went well, except for that hiccup. It went like clockwork. And it's because everybody was involved. Everybody got involved in the process. Everybody came up with suggestions on what are we going to do at this point, how are we going to do it, what's the backup plan, what's the backup to the backup. And while there was leadership, I turned out to be the senior guy for that mission. That was a training exercise. That wasn't a real mission. But it was training for a potential real mission. So I had the big picture. I knew what the big picture was. But I didn't know all the answers. And I didn't expect to know all the answers. And I don't want to say that I didn't want to know all the answers, but I wanted to work with a you know, I want the rest of the group to, hey, let's sit down and focus on this, and, you know, we've got this amount of time, and this is what we gotta figure out. Here's the different things as I understand them. Does this make sense? Am I missing something here? What about this? Hey, you got a specialty in this. How should we do this? How should we coordinate this airdrop if it's gonna happen? Oh, I know how to do that. What about walking out of the submarine with snowshoes? Can we put snowshoes on our back? Will we still fit in that 19-inch tube? Yeah, I think so. Well, we can go to the submarine today. Well, it's in port, and let's see if that'll work. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So we were very thorough. We were very focused. We came up with a plan, and it worked. It worked. When we're working with groups, and I heard you loud and clear on we got a mixed bag here. We're always kind of pushing them, right? To get it done. I mean, if you've ever had a situation where you're working with a group and it just seems easy peasy, it's one of two things. It's either a really exceptional group, which does happen, and that's wonderful when it does, or it's too easy. And if it's too easy, maybe something's missing, or you need to ramp it up a little bit. Anybody have that kind of a situation? Where it's like, it just seems too easy, something's missing here, and then you start asking questions. Am I missing something here? You brought me in to do this, and this is what I understand the situation to be. Am I missing something? Why did you bring me in? This just doesn't seem that hard. I don't know. Most of the time, that's not the situation, right? It's instead, you're the cheerleader trying to get everybody excited, breaking up the rift, getting people to say, hey, this is a major paradigm shift, but okay, let's do it, and then they start to get enthusiastic about it, and so it goes. David?
So you spoke about 3 different missions, if I remember correctly. The first mission had 8 people, the second mission had 16, and the third mission had 6.
First one, 16.
First one, 16.
Second had 8, third had 6.
Is there any correlation between the number of people and success? Because you have fewer communication channels between people, so...
Correlation between the number of people?
Right. So you have 16, that seemed to be the biggest failure. You had 8, and that was not great. You got halfway there, and the third one was successful.
That's certainly when there's more people involved, in my opinion, that makes it more complex. Definitely. But SEALs and special operators today, they gotta take over town in an urban environment. So towards the end of my career, so in the beginning of my career, I was still working with Vietnam era guys. They were our trainers. And we were still doing stuff in the woods, mostly, if not on the water, in the woods. And probably, starting in the 80s, we started to say, you know what, we need to move from the woods into urban environments. And now most conflicts happen in urban environments. So imagine, if you've got let's say we all had to take over part of the University of Vermont's campus in 2 hours. And that means going inside every building, clearing every room, walking the streets and the walkways, making sure they're all secure, there's no improvised explosive devices or roadside bombs or people shooting at us or trying to blow us up, any of that stuff. I mean, that's how complicated it is now. So it's very challenging. Bigger numbers are challenging, but that's where communication has to be extremely organized, ramped up and really organized. But you've got, that the leadership has still got all the elements that we've been talking about. It's all still got to be there, but coordinated, directed, and focused. And then everybody has to know has to happen. Everybody has to have the big picture when they go to execute. Did I answer your question? It's definitely, yeah, the short answer is yeah. I mean, so I was a sniper for a period of time, and that was a hard job, because it meant I was going in ahead of most everybody else a lot of times, and I'd have to stay on objective for 24 to 48 hours, and I might get 2 to 4 hours of sleep, and I had to report information back, and I had to move around, I had to stay awake, and I had to provide good information. But it was only me and one other guy. You know, and we were taking turns doing that and communicating back to the Hollywoods that would come in fast and furious, done a fast road, bang, bang, shoot them up, and then we'd all leave. Yeah, less people's easier. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody have an opinion on that?
If you have more people, you have more points of failure.
More points of failure.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Unless you have redundancy. Unless you have redundancy, that'll work.
And
Because when you have more points of failure, then you have to have redundancy.
redundancy, yeah, definitely.
I'm just saying, it depends on the scope and the amount of crap you're trying to get done, too.
Say again?
Just the amount of stuff you're trying to get done, the scope of your work,
Oh.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes.
I mean,
it makes sense
you
to have
deal with
some
large
stuff.
groups a lot as professionals. So, let's share some information. Who's got some other insights on that? You know, well, hey, I do this. This is what this is a common practice. Do you all know each other well? How many of you have met for the first time tonight? How many of you, I'm curious, how many of you have walked around and introduced yourself to other people? Yeah, that's good. So let's share some information. Let's, you know, it's the big numbers. It's a challenge. Big numbers of people, right? There's the good and bad to that, right? So anybody got some? Hey, this is what I do this is one of the first things I do when I go in and I'm in front of a large group. You know, I do a handstand against the wall, and then I go to one hand, and then I go, oh, well, look at that idiot. What's that about? And then you start talking, whatever, I don't know.
Can you do that?
Not me, no.
I think shooting
I hurt
yourself out of
myself.
19-inch tornado too helps.
Yeah. Right? Now, what do you do? Any suggestions around that? You know, is there something, do you have a standard practice?
The first thing I try to do is introductions.
Yeah. Well, what I do at this table tonight, what do you do for fun? Right? And part of the reason I do that, what do you do for fun, is because it gets people talking. Right? And if the project's hard, well, try to put some fun into it. Right? You know, so people at least say, hey, this sucks, but I'm having fun. I don't know. What else? That's a great idea. Yeah, introductions. Anything else? I hold them at gunpoint. I tell them the room is wired with explosives, and somebody starts acting. I don't know. What do you? You know, you make stuff up. Do you make stuff up? Or
He was just saying, it depends on the scope, so like, how big, how complex is the project, like what kind of expertise do you need? You know, there's all these vectors that come together when you're trying to plan a project, and, you know, do you need multiple teams because there's separate parts of the project? So, I mean, I'm sure that in your experience, like you said, you had a team of 16, well, that team of 16 likely had, you know, a group of 3 that were, you had the 2 snipers, then you had other.
That's right. And then so that when, you know, I'm imagining, if you, I don't know, I mean, do you deal with 100 people sometimes or more than that?
Some of us may do that, but.
So I'd like to think that you're still like, maybe you're having to break it into teams, and then each team has got a representative, and then the representatives come together and talk, and then maybe you have that role switch out, depending on how long you're working, so you're getting people engaged, getting them enthusiastic about the project that they said, hey, you know, at the beginning they said, hey, this isn't fun, I don't want to do this. Oh, wait a minute, this isn't so bad, and hey, I'm stepping up to the plate for this next meeting. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but I've never done that before, and you know, I kind of like the idea of that. Team building, constantly monitoring that as well. Get people to talk, share ideas, innovate, lead. Yeah, it's complicated, with a lot, boy. I mean, when I worked in construction, did some commercial stuff, same thing, it's always the same thing. I always see the same thing. It's leadership, teamwork, communication. Somebody's got a great idea, is anybody hearing it? Or are people just being silent, not saying anything, and then the next thing you know, those big windows that were supposed to go in easily don't fit, or they fell off, and wow, I wonder how many thousands of dollars that was. It's got to be replaced now. The company's going to eat that one, because that was their mistake. Yeah, I mean, it can be a very, I mean, you got to be tireless in your approach, and it can be exhausting. But at the same time, as I mentioned, I joined the Navy to be a shipbuilder. I never even heard of SEALs. And I was so fascinated starting in basic training with all these people that came from all points of compass, put in this situation. In this case, it was basic training where we were all worthless, for the first few weeks. And we had to work together, we had to school up and adapt, overcome, and succeed. And then going through SEAL training was that on steroids. And it was like, it wasn't all fun, but I loved it. I absolutely loved, and still to this day, love working with people. I don't think there's anything, for me anyway, that replaces the people component of whatever it is we're doing. Everybody's got something to contribute, everybody. Yeah, Neil.
So, Bill, thanks a lot. I think we're getting close on time.
Oh, yeah,
but
okay.
I just wanted to ask you one quick question, and sorry, folks, but maybe it's a little bit of plug because he has his service out that your daytime job, your website.
Yeah.
So maybe what kind of things do you usually do during what services do you offer through your company that you
Thank you.
do training?
Yeah, fundamental leadership, teamwork, communication training. I do one-on-ones. I've worked with small companies. I've worked with law enforcement. I've worked with military. I've worked with sports teams. But what I do is what we're talking about right now. That's what I do. And I still work with, I've got some local folks here that want to pursue special operations jobs. There's a young woman that I'm going to work with next week that wants to venture into the lake in the summertime, so I want to make her a better swimmer. But that's what I do. Related to this tonight, though, specifically, I do want to offer a teaser. I've got a sheet. It's a sign-up sheet. If you're interested, you can provide me your contact information, and I can provide you a recap of what we talked about tonight. And then I can also, if you're interested, in about a month from now, I'll have a little thing online. It's about it'll be about 10 minutes. That kind of, it's like a question and answer and a situations type of thing. Pick choice A or choice B. I'll be posting that online in about a month. So if you're interested in any of that, I'll have a sheet. I'll just leave it on this table right here, along with some of my cards and a little dig me brochure that talks about what I do. Okay, thanks for that, Neil. So, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Very much appreciate it. Great stuff. Look for the survey that's coming out to let us know how tonight went for you. And we will see you on February 12th. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for coming.